Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to have Eleanor back. Not exactly on the podcast, but definitely on some sort of show. And the show being the celebration of the 1,000 downloads of the podcast. This video is going to be available on YouTube. And so thank you, Eleanor, for coming back. I gave a bit of homework to the people who are my guests for these celebrations, and you had to choose an episode to listen to so that we could discuss this topic and have a little bit of a conversation and maybe take it further. Because, I do the episodes on my own, I do the research, but there's probably some things I've missed. And although I was with Chantal for the episode that you chose, which is about spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity, I'm always keen to have feedback and continue the conversation. So thank you for being back with me today, Eleanor.
Well, thank you for having me back, and congratulations on the is it 1,000 downloads? That's a great.
Yes. No, it's I just want to celebrate that milestone, and soon, actually, in September, it's going to be a year on the podcast, so I might do another celebration. But for now, yeah, it's the 1,000 downloads. So, Eleanor, do you want to introduce yourself again for maybe people who might not have watched your episode on the podcast, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. So I call myself an intuitive love coach. I've been doing intuitive work for over 15 years, and it morphed into helping women over 40 find love, because that was my own, I call it my Shiro's journey, where I had very difficult relationships and I just couldn't, figure this out. Like, how do I find a love that's really devoted and committed and just a beautiful kind of love relationship instead of the sort of toxic ones I had. And so as I went through my journey and figured these things out, it's all a work in progress, but the women who were working with me on other things kept asking me, but what about love? And what about love? And what about love? So it found me basically. And I thought, well, I can, after I met my husband and felt this is really something that I have gone through to the other side. I'm not saying I'm perfect or we're perfect or anything, but I said I've figured this out enough that I can now help women with this. So that's what I do now. It's just really helping women find the things that are essentially in their way, or that they're going in the opposite direction of what they want when it comes to love.
Oh, that's really very interesting. And I was going to ask the question, how did intuition make its way into the love piece? But it's obviously the opposite way that it happened, right?
Yeah,
So
the intuition has always been there, but the love part came in after. It was about healing and intuition and everything from the beginning, and really finding your true self. And that's why my brand name is truly Eleanor. And before that, it was truly me. So it's always been about, finding your true self and, tapping into that part of yourself. And then that involves a lot of intuitive work. And so I was doing that, and the love part came afterwards.
Hmm.
So,
And how did you tap it? I mean, have you always been intuitive? Was it something that kind of grew on you? I mean, I believe everybody's intuitive, but that doesn't mean that people know that they are, nor does it mean that they'll use their intuition. So I'm curious
yeah.
about that part as well.
Yeah, so I have always been, I guess, what you would call sensitive, and just feeling a lot of things going on, knowing things and being like, well, I know this, and just having a sense of being tapped into something that maybe not a lot of people were realizing. I didn't really know as a child that's what was happening. I just felt overwhelmed all the time with things that were going on, and very intense experiences. And then later on, as a teenager, I started to study all of the they call the new age things, oracle cards and crystals and all of these things. And then I eventually started to open up to the fact that I do have this ability that is, I know that everyone has intuition, but like you were saying, you can actually develop certain abilities, or, it's really about, I think, tapping into your full potential. And for me, that happened to be like the psychic mediumship work and channeling and all kinds of things like that. So in my early 20s, I started to really explore that. But it started with being very overwhelmed and having a sense of knowing things that were beyond what was right in front of me, if that makes sense. I don't.
No, I love that you're sharing that because it's not actually something that we explored that much, I think, when I interviewed you. So I'm
Yeah.
loving learning more about that. And I didn't know you were a psychic medium. Do you still do psychic mediumship, or does that come
Um,
across maybe when you're working the love romantic side of
yeah,
things?
yeah, it comes into, it's sort of the umbrella. That's why I call myself the intuitive love coach. That's like the umbrella term I would use. And when working with people or in any of the like guided meditations I do or things like that, it's all me tapping into channeling and bringing through, guides or, tapping into someone else's higher self with permission, of course, and just bringing in the information that is the highest and best for that person. And it comes through in different ways. And I find that my abilities are based on the way it comes through is the way the person is going to receive it the best. So it might be come through as a song or a poem or a phrase, or it might be imagery that they really relate to, or a certain topic that is going to really bring it home for them. Or just, yeah, so it's always different based on the person. And so when I do that intuitive work, it's finding those things that might be hidden to the person that they are doing, like patterns of self-sabotaging or something that they're just running on the spot, or they feel like they're just going around in circles. And I help them find that thing so that they can start to unravel it and go in the direction they want to go in and
Yeah,
take
because
control.
with all our relationship, whether they're romantic or not, but I think the romantic level takes us to a deeper state of we dig in deeper into the subconscious then, because we might have some aspirations of the kind of relationship we want, or maybe the kind of behavior we want um to I suppose show, but then our subconscious is so strong because it links back to our very primal attachments, and then we can act out or sabotage or do all sorts of things that we don't understand even why we're doing it. So that sounds like a really valuable
Mhm.
service that you're offering here.
Yeah, the other thing that just came up is I've over the years noticed that what will come to me is like you were talking in the episode with Chantal about the body and how important the body is. And uh, I noticed over the last 10 years or so where something will come through. If I tune in, I will actually be shown the person's body like a map and be directed like specifically to a part of the body. And then I will hear how do you say it, like a limiting belief or a very deeply subconscious belief about themselves. Like, for example, I'm worthless, or so, I'll hear it never works out for me, or no one wants to talk to me, or no one sees me. And that's what I'll hear exactly word for word. And it will be connected to that person's part of the body, like their shoulder or their head or their knee.
Wow.
and and it's what I've been shown is that it's like you can get energy stuck in the body, and it will
Yeah.
have a vibration, it will have an emotional context, or it'll have a belief system that is like an energy stagnation, I guess. And we go to that place, and then even sometimes just acknowledging it will help it just release, almost like releasing a muscle spasm or something.
That's fascinating because I've discussed since your interview with Emma Turton, who does the same. I suppose no, we don't do, you do things very differently, but what I mean is that she does it in the context of health, but
Yeah.
I had never heard someone talk about it in the context of love. So this is truly fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, I think in the context to make it make sense, like when I was finding myself, when I was on my, I mean, I still am, it's always never-ending journey. But in the beginning, I was kind of cycling through different focuses and different types of intuitive work. And for a while, I was told by other people that they're like, you're a medical intuitive. And so that there was a time when I was helping people with their health and their body. But it still morphed into love because I was doing that. And I was, because the person was having like chronic pain or some kind of illness. And I would be directed to the map on the body and where it is and what is the emotional underlying stagnation or stuck energy, and we would release it and things. But it's funny because I was doing that, but people were still like, well, I have this chronic illness or this terrible thing that I'm suffering with in my body, but I don't care about that because I want a relationship. And they're like, forget about that, don't help me with that, I want to know how I can find somebody. So it was really interesting because I was like, well, I feel like I need to help this person directly with this because this seems to be the most painful thing. But the most painful thing over doing this for like 15, 20 years is the person the people I work with, is that they're alone. That's the most painful thing to them.
Of course.
Regardless of disease or anything else going on in their life, it's like, that is not the important thing. The important thing is I want to find a relationship. And of course, not everybody wants. I'm talking about people who desire this, desire to have a relationship.
No, I mean, we probably should do another episode on that. We'll see. We'll get there in the end because I've never heard about it talking. I never heard someone talking about it this way, and I find that really interesting because I think I agree with you. Aloneness is probably the things that's the most difficult to cope with. Generally, I think people cope less. Well, I can't say, everybody's journey is different, but I can definitely see why that would be a very difficult one.
And I have a caveat because obviously we are still we need to learn how to be alone. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, we still develop our own sense of self in a very strong way where we can enjoy and love our own company. And also, there's nothing wrong with, you figure out how to be alone and you really enjoy it and your alone time and you love being with yourself and connected to your true self. And you can also want to have a relationship and share that with somebody else. So, but has to start with the first one. You can't be like, it's very difficult to not be able to be alone and not know yourself and not be connected to yourself and have a very amazing relationship. It doesn't really go together.
Do you feel that's one of the reasons why it's important to have sort of like a cooling off period after a relationship before you have another one?
Yeah, and I think it's different for everyone how they go through those cycles of healing. I do definitely believe you need to get some perspective. And also, that one of the things that I did notice over time is that people were thinking, well, I need to heal this and 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 get perfect, almost like I need to get to this level of healing and then I can have a relationship. And it was just sort of extending this suffering or almost an what's the word, when you ostracize yourself and just shut yourself off from everything because you're like, well, I still need to heal this. So there's a nice happy medium there.
Yeah, because I seem to remember you mentioning in the episode that in your interview back in January that you don't need to be perfectly healed to get into a relationship. So there's that possible danger where you're constantly picking at yourself and thinking, no, I have to be completely right before I get into another relationship. And I kind of agree with that, although it's probably individual and it depends on the level, I suppose, of healing that you need. But no, it's really interesting. So you picked up specifically, because you had the whole list, spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity. And I think you mentioned offline that it was your favorite topic. So why is it your favorite topic? First, I'm really, really curious to know.
So I guess in a nutshell, because I was exposed to all of these different belief systems and more of the sort of, not the typical, growing up in Canada, not the typical type of thing. My parents were Buddhist, and a lot of the friends and people that they were involved with were all into all of these Buddhism, and also New Age and meditation and oracle cards and all of these things. So I was exposed to that world very young, and so I just went on this quest to find out all of these things. And I came across many spiritual communities that were very, I say hypocritical, is it's a harsh word, but I mean it sort of fits. Where it's like, on the one hand, someone is saying love and light, and let's just talk about love, and we're only one love, and everything's just this. And the other's hand is how they're behaving, how they're talking to people, what they're doing in their life, how they're conducting themselves. And it's just, it was seeming like a very imbalanced type of thing. So the reason I love spiritual bypassing is, we'll talk more about what I feel it means, but it's like a level of disconnection and incongruence, and almost like arrogance of, I'm this wonderful, wise being, and I don't get mad, and I don't do this, and I don't do that. And it just informed so many things in my life. And once I kind of got away from the influence of that, it changed my life completely. And the toxic positivity, once I was able to almost work through it, it changed my whole entire life on every level. So that's why it's my favorite topic.
Yeah, and I can resonate with that in the sense that I lived it in two stages. I've seen it as a Catholic girl, raised as a Catholic. I could see that people were behaving very differently in church and outside of church. And already that discrepancy didn't sit very well with me. And I don't know if it's because of confession or something else. And I don't know if it exists in other religious communities. But I also found it similar to you when I started navigating the New Age world. And I was like, there's something familiar here, and I'm not sure I want to partake to this.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. That's really, really interesting. So you said it transformed your life. Is that when you stopped? Do you think you ended up spiritual bypassing yourself or being toxic to yourself, and then you decided to let go of that? And how did you do that? Because there's a lot of pressure to be positive, especially in spiritual circles, and to appear to be spiritual.
Yes.
I'm going to say appear because I'll share an anecdote if I have time about a crystal shop in a minute. But yeah, that over to you first.
Yeah, so the spiritual bypassing, I kind of like, I would say, groomed or shown, this is how if you want to be a spiritual person on like as a business, or you want to be in this spiritual world, so both personally and in business, you have to be like this. And it wasn't quite as like direct as this, but this was the messaging, is like, we don't get mad, nobody gets angry, because it's all about love and light, and you are a spiritual being. And so all of these lower vibrations are not welcome. They're not real. They don't even exist. Like, the way it was worded to me over several spiritual communities was like, all of these lower vibrations are beneath you, because you are up here, you're up in the higher levels, you're up in the 10th dimension or whatever.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that one as well. The dimensions. I never talk about that myself, but yeah, I've heard that.
The dimensions make me cringe, actually, because you see it as a hierarchy, right? Like, the way it's been presented, I think, anyway. So you have to be up in the 5D, forget about 3D. 3D is bad, 5D is good, 10D is even better. It's sort of like, it's I can't think of the word, but the hierarchy. And then certain emotions are not a thing. Certain words you can't say. You can't swear. Don't say bad words, because then you hold this bad vibration, and then you're going to be toxic. uh, and then you're going to spew it onto your clients, and you're going to ruin them. And it was like a very strict sort of way of being like, you can't show up for a call or do a healing or anything if you're angry or if you have had a bad experience, because then you're going to just spew it all over people. And it's just so many rules and so many things where I felt like at the time it was like you couldn't breathe or do anything without being worried, like, oh, is this low vibe? Is this tainting me? Am I, spewing this onto other people? And so then it goes into the toxic positivity. Like, if you're feeling bad, if you're feeling angry, if you are feeling these things, then you have to immediately get rid of them. Like, just put on a smile and say, no, I'm love and light. I'm oneness. I'm this and that, and just passing it through. So that's what I did for decades. I didn't cry. I was filled with anger, actually, and rage. And I was probably a ticking time bomb for so many years, and it would come out because you can't keep it in. It's like,
No, you can't. You're right.
you hold a soccer ball underwater and boom, it goes flying up. So I had like the worst temper. I still have to manage my emotions because of so many years of doing that. And so I'm still in that, self-mastery of my emotions, my body. It's a work in progress. And it's, I would say, my Achilles heel still, because of so many years of just trying to train myself and listening to this world of like, don't feel this, don't do that, don't say this, all that sort of stuff. I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but that was my experience, and I was never in my body. So that's the episode I listened to with Chantel was so resonating with me so much, because I did tons of healing over decades, but not once did it involve my emotions or my body.
Wow.
And I have a story, like my turning point. The reason I would say this is my turning point is I had a friend who is a shaman, and I was going through, I guess so many years of holding things in. I was having like panic attacks, and my body was starting to break down, because it was like, we have to deal with this. And so I went to my friend, the shaman, and I'll never forget. He's like, so you have all these traumas that you haven't dealt with, and you need to deal with them. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I got so upset. I said, I've been healing for 10, 15, 20 years. I've been doing healing like you wouldn't believe, like, 10th dimension stuff, right? And I was like, I've done so much healing. I should be like, Jesus by now. And and he's like, you think you've healed, but you haven't actually healed anything. You haven't healed any of your trauma. And I was just like, I was incensed. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. You are crazy. This is ridiculous. I had like the hugest resistance and reaction to that. And it took me weeks before I would want to speak to him again, because I was like, no, this is just ridiculous. But that was the turning point where I said, oh my God, I have to actually feel these terrible feelings. I have to like get to know my body. I have to actually be in my body. I have to feel these things. And that was like the start, even though I'd had, so many years before that of healing. This is just the start of my, I don't want to say real healing, but the healing that actually moved things forward and changed everything for me, that changed the patterns and changed the trajectory of my life, and stopped the self-sabotaging and the just going around in circles with the same thing happening over and over again, no matter what. No matter, like, I had become a Reiki teacher, I was just so much into energy, did so many of these things. I was never in my body and never feeling my emotions.
Yeah. I can relate. I mean, luckily for me, it was a much shorter period of time than yours, but I got trapped a little bit in that thing, and then I realized this is ridiculous. And for me, the breakthrough was when I decided so because I only kept a positive journal at one point because of that influence, and then the breakthrough happened when I decided to have two. the positive and the negative, and I would engage in one or the other depending on the mood, and really acknowledge exactly how I was feeling, without having any fear around the fact that I was being negative, and letting go of all that, I have to be almost saint-like, or non-human, basically.
Yeah,
It's denying your
exactly.
humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I think that's going to be really powerful for our listeners as well, to understand this trap of the spiritual community into this false positivity. But what strikes me from what you've shared as well is that, like, you did like years and years and years of healing, and it's only when you embraced your negative emotions that it actually got you anywhere. And I think that's a very powerful message. Maybe not one that everybody wants to hear.
No, definitely not. I did not want to hear it. I was just like, but also it wasn't a waste. Like all those years, that was not a waste of time. Like all the other healing I did was a wonderful journey. But in terms of like living your life in the here and now, and this life, the actual day-to-day life, getting up, having breakfast, going around your day, that needs the body and the emotions and like the solid, tangible, not the 10th dimension. You need
Yeah,
to,
and
yeah.
And I like that you started, and I don't know if it was before we started recording or not, talking about having your coffee, because that's
Yeah.
also something like, oh my God, you're drinking
Yeah.
coffee, or you're drinking Coke, or
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
that's so unspiritual, You have
Yeah.
to be vegan, and you have to eat perfectly, and you have to behave perfectly, and it's just this cycle. And I think it's an ego trap that people don't realize is there. It's the ego just acting in a different way.
And it's a sense of I will fully admit the arrogance, like of being, look at me, I'm just so amazing. I do Reiki, and I'm like, yeah, like you said, I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan, or whatever it is. And I don't, I will be careful what I'm saying here, but it's everybody's choice what they want to be. But using it as a way of saying, I'm so amazing and superior, and look at how much better I'm doing than everybody else, and that type of thing, looking down on people is the definitely a spiritual trap that can happen because of this spiritual bypassing. Like I feel like you're just so much in the clouds in a real sense that you don't understand that we are all like each other, and getting down into a friend of mine said it just a while ago about, there's a practice, I don't know if it's in Buddhism, but where you say, oh, just like me, like you go around as a practice where you see someone yelling at somebody else and you say, oh, just like me, because it's like we all do that and we're all human, and you need to actually embrace the fact that we all have these emotions, like you were talking, I think, in the episode about jealousy and anger and being like all those, and shame and everything, and greed, like we all have that. And the minute we try to pretend we're not, we're above it, that's what I say is spiritual bypassing and the toxic positivity. The other thing about the episode I really want to highlight that you said was, you've never been more harmed by people who are in the spiritual community. And I would say I've never been attacked more viciously than by people who are the love and light people. So that's food for thought right there.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's just should be a cautionary tale for people who are exploring the spiritual world. And I feel that it's good that we voice our experiences to protect other people who might be caught by surprise. I was certainly caught by surprise. I didn't see it coming, and it was brutal.
Yeah.
Um, but it comes from denying that part of us that we don't like. So if we deny it, then we project it onto others, and we try to separate, which is kind of almost ironic, because they talk about love and light all being one, but actually you separate yourself from your human part, and then so thank you for that. Thank you for mentioning it, because that was where we came from, Chantal and I, of really wanting to. And for me, so I did an episode on what are the 6 main things that you need on your spiritual journey, and top of the list for me is therapy, and taking responsibility for your own thoughts and emotions, and because that makes you a safer person. And
Yes.
I love what you're saying, because I know now that you're a safe person for people to come to you, and that is incredibly important, the safety, emotional safety.
It's huge. And I look back and realize how, not to get down on myself, just noticing, looking back, that I was really thinking I was amazing and doing an amazing healing work and everything. But there was a lot of things that were very toxic about me and what I was doing at the time, because the awareness was not there of my actions in life and what I was doing. And then realizing finally, like you said, when you do your work and you release like so many of these emotions and look at your patterns, and like, instead of being the way I was seeing myself as a victim, is seeing, well, how many people have I hurt in this way? And, that I'm spending all my time saying I've been a victim of all these things. But then I think back on many people that I've hurt in ways that I think now and I cringe, because I was spending all my time being a victim, but I was no picnic a lot of the times either. So.
Oh, and it's I didn't think we would talk about that, but the whole empath world. When I entered the empath world, and I don't even resonate with the term empath, but actually it's one of these people who call themselves empath that was the nastiest to me that I've ever experienced before. And she was completely in victim mode, and that was certainly an eye-opener as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, can I say one thing about these? So the spiritual bypassing and the toxic positivity, there's another sort of like arm of that, is the empaths and the sensitivity. And the things that I've seen kind of connected to that is like, if you look at the spiritual bypassing, and the idea is like, I'm in this other dimension, I'm in oneness, and I'm perfectly spiritual being. And then you add into that, but when I'm in the world, when I'm in 3D, I can't go to the mall because, oh my God, the energy just depletes me, and I fall on the floor and collapse because I'm so weak. And all these other things. So it's almost like the complete opposite. So there's the spiritual, height, and then, but yet in your day-to-day life, you can't function. Like, there's the same messaging to that, the same group of people. It's like, well, you are like the most powerful being because you're all one, and you're amazing in that way, but you can't go to the mall, or don't talk to this person because then you're going to not be able to handle the toxicity. And it's just very just the complete opposite, and very confusing messaging.
Yeah, and I think the way I understand that, I might or might not be right, is that there's no spiritual boundaries, no energetic boundaries, and you can't function in the real world without these boundaries, and being able to. And that leads to the topic of protection, because I know I've had a discussion even recently with someone who's all about the oneness and the light and everything. And I actually teach my clients to protect themselves energetically. And I know it's a big debate in the energy work world, because some people say, no, you don't need protection. And I still remember having that discussion in the Reiki group when I trained as a master. And others, and the complete opposite, they said, no, actually, you need to protect yourself. And this contradiction, I came to my own conclusion of what I understand is right for me. But these are important topics, for sure.
Yeah, I I would say I really wanted to highlight the belief. It's like the belief system that messaging perpetuates is that the person is not capable of living in this world. Like it's, I'm trying to get the wording that I had. It's going to come back to me. Um, yeah, we'll just go on to the next thing. I lost the thread. I had a
No,
thing and
it's
dropped
okay.
it
It's
and lost it.
but no, but thanks for raising it anyway. I think our listeners will get a lot from this because it highlights another trap. As you say, it's another arm of this toxic positivity. And I
Yeah.
know for me, if someone says they're an empath, I kind of cringe. I don't mean to be horrible because I meet a lot of very sensitive people. I'm very sensitive myself. My children are sensitive. Most of my friends are very sensitive. But when you use the word empath, it takes you into I suppose it takes you into a belief system, just as you said, that I find can be dangerous. And
Mhm.
I wanted to share a very quick experience that I've never shared before on podcast or interviews. So I live next to a crystal warehouse,
Oh
and
wow.
I know, and I used to have a wholesales accounts there because I used to teach Reiki, and then I had some crystals involved in everything, and people could buy through me. It was still quite small, but anyway, whenever I went to that warehouse, there was a lady who did all the orders and everything, and we got talking a little bit, and when I said I was a healer, she was really surprised. And I don't call myself a healer that often because I'm not comfortable with the word anymore. But anyway, at the time, I still used the word healer. And she says, "No, I don't understand that because most healers who come here have horrible, they're really horrible with me." I was like, "You're too nice to be a healer." And I'm just like, I literally
Wow.
dropped on the floor. Like I was floored because
That's,
apparently, because she was just a secretary and she was just taking their money, they were
yeah.
being really horrible to them when they were in like the most amazing warehouse possible, where all these crystals there. And and that I think that was my first lesson in understanding the other side of things, the dark side maybe of the
Yeah.
healing world.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's very telling of the story.
Yes, I was so naive, honestly. I just had no idea. No idea.
I got the thread back if you want to.
Go on,
Um,
go on. Go ahead. Go
the,
for it.
so the belief system that messaging perpetuates is I'm not powerful and I'm incapable. So it's like even though I'm this very, you know, amazing
Superior.
spiritual being, I'm incapable and I'm not competent in day-to-day life and I'm weak and not powerful. That was I think the worst belief system that had really infiltrated me as with because I was like, well, if I'm this amazing spiritual, like I can channel and connect and do all these things, and people say it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. But I was incapable of day-to-day life. And so I had this amazing amount of shame around why can't I have a normal life and just even cope with day-to-day life. And I think a lot of the messaging of how great you're supposed to be and how like the back and forth messaging was just the most confusing thing, and I wasn't connected to my true self at any point.
Hmm. That's why I love the name of your business, truly, Eleanor. It's just so beautiful. It says
I
every
grew
time I come back to it, I feel it's so
in,
powerful.
I grew into it.
Hmm. So, was there any aha moments when you listened to the episode? And then we'll talk about how I could have done it better, because I'm sure I could. 'Cause, I just pulled all these things all by myself, so I'm sure to have missed something.
Yeah, so the ahas were definitely around the body, and it just really brought it home for me because the whole like some spiritual communities talking about all of these sort of things that you can learn or do or be in all these dimensions, but never talking. I mean, I'm talking about, in the beginning, like 2007 and that like sort of era. the spiritual communities. It never mentioned the body. It was like not even brought up once. So that really hit home as you were talking about it, because I didn't even contemplate having to, go to therapy or actually deal with my childhood trauma or emotions. That never occurred to me, because I'm like, no, I'm becoming a Reiki teacher. I'm doing this. That's going to bypass all of this stuff. That's going to get me over that hump. I'll just go right over it. And then all those emotions that were under my, like, constantly trying to get my attention, I would just say, oh no, I'm just love and light. And so that's where the toxic positivity came in. So I think the whole discussion was very interesting, because Chantal was also talking about her childhood trauma and everything, and how you can't skip it. Like you just can't, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can be the most well-known spiritual leader or teacher in the whole entire world, but if you haven't dealt with those things, or like learned how to be a human being, it's going to be very obvious, because every time the person is offline or off, in the cafe talking to people, it'll be obvious how they conduct themselves.
Mm. Yeah, I think Chantal brings a lot of wisdom to that. And through her own being attracted to the bypassing, because it's so seductive, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that, and I went through that same
Yeah.
thing. Very, very, very seductive. And the fantasy, oh, that's the other thing about the episode. Really, I loved talking about the fantasy, because, and like you were saying, La La Land, the fantasy, yeah, the fantasy aspect is the end all be all. Like, it's just, wow, I love being in this fantasy world and this, imaginary world. Like, I'm not saying that the universal love doesn't exist and everything, but the way it's like, you think you can skip through the daisies in your life and never have your feet touch the ground. That's La La Land. Like, you just,
Yeah, and it's almost like there's this almost, and I don't want to say childish, because I think it's almost an insult to children in a way, but there's a belief that if the more spiritual you are, the less you're going to have bad things happen to you, that sort of and that's absolutely not true.
no.
um
I remember like my clients, the thing that they least wanted to hear from me was when I would say, like, you may have more things happen to you, but you'll be less affected by it. So it's not like it's going to stop happening. Life doesn't stop happening, and it may even get more intense, but you're going to be more able to deal with it. And that's where the belief gets overturned of being incapable and incompetent. Once you overturn that, you're like, okay, I can handle what life sends my way.
mm. And what could we have done better? Is there something that
Um,
I think we've missed? Or, and I'm not saying that to, I'm not fishing for compliments here. I genuinely want to improve the quality of the content that I share, and the guests and everything. I think the guests are the best, but
yeah. It was very interesting to, I'm just kind of talking out loud. It was great to listen to Chantal's story and like put that into context, and her experience of it, of the topic, and going through, I'm just trying to think. An improvement, I can't really think of anything, because the most important thing for me when I listen to things like that is, what's the person's story
mm,
and what's the context of their experience? Because I kind of use that as a, I guess, for, I don't know how this is going to sound, but I don't like listening to people who haven't really experienced the thing themselves. I have a hard time
mm,
just taking intellectual knowledge that people can talk about and say, I'm really good at teaching this or talking about it, if they haven't been through it or experienced it. I don't really resonate as much with that. So when it's an episode where the person's saying, this is my experience and this is what I've brought forward, then I really like that.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I like when people combine knowledge with lived experience.
Yes.
I think lived experience enough is not enough in itself, but it
No.
can be a wonderful fuel for the rest.
Yeah. The
Uh,
wisdom from that. Yeah, like how you said
yeah,
that.
as long as we understand that even if 100 people go through the same lived experience, they might take something completely different from it. So that's the
Yes.
caveat, because I've also met people who have gone through an experience, says, I've gone through it, so now I can help everyone with it. But then they miss
Yeah.
the point that actually someone might feel completely different about what they went through, even if it seemed to be the same experience.
Yes. Yeah, like the wisdom from that and being able to offer it at a higher level. Yeah. I feel like she keeps learning, like from the interview, she keeps learning and shifting, and new things come through her learning. So that was also
Yeah.
nice to listen to as well.
And we're working with Chantal on her releasing her own podcast. So I'm really, really hoping that it's going to come out in the autumn. Well, for the Northern Hemisphere, obviously.
Yeah.
In the Northern
Yeah.
autumn,
Yeah.
because, yeah, I think she has a lot of wisdom to share. And I think she's ready also to share more about her life circumstances. So she
Mhm.
wrote a memoir about it, and which actually lead me to the last question I wanted to ask you before we wrap
Yeah.
this interview, because I like to
Yeah.
keep it under an hour. So I hope that's okay. Have
Absolutely.
you ever thought about writing a book, or have you already written a book about what you do? Well,
Yes, I have it. I wrote a short book in 2015, but I'm rewriting it, and it is a memoir. Like, I mean, I would say it's
okay,
an autobiography, but it's based on my experiences of the healing and going through this journey of finding myself and finding love. So that's actually, I'm writing that now, and
wonderful. Well,
fingers
I
crossed.
have a group for aspiring authors and people who love to read. So um, when you're ready, I'd love to interview you in there specifically about your book and the process and how it felt.
Yeah,
So,
actually, I didn't. I sort of saw something about that, so I would like the link for the group. Actually, now that
okay,
I'm.
yeah, let's keep in touch and have a chat, because I'm a big fan of memoir. I've written two and a half myself.
I
It's a
love.
genre that a lot of people don't understand. That requires a lot of healing, actually, and probably therapy. I always recommend people go through therapy whilst they're writing their memoir, because there's always something that's going to come up that's going to catch you by surprise.
Yeah,
And Chantal is actually writing her memoirs as well, so that's going to be fun. Maybe we could
that's.
have a three-person interview. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah,
All
I would
right. Well,
definitely hop on that.
did you want to add anything before we wrap this episode up, or do you feel you've
I think it's just like you were saying, a cautionary tale to not get or to be aware of when something feels very off. Like if you're being told or there's messaging around, you have to be this amazing elite thing, and then you're like, but what about in my day-to-day life? Like, always ground it with something, like into your body, into the earth. That's going to be the way that you'll definitely move forward. I can pretty much almost guarantee that if you're able to do the both, be connected and also be grounded in your body, that's amazing things will happen.
Thank you. And I like to see it as a tree. You can't grow up if you don't have the roots going down as well. And
Yeah.
usually the branches have to be the same size as the roots. So
Yes.
a tree that would only have branches will tip
Exactly.
over. And that's a bit what I feel with the spirituality. It's exactly that. The more you grow upwards, the more you have to grow downwards to keep that balance. Mm.
Exactly. And into the dark earth of the feminine. That's what the visual I was getting when you said that.
Mm.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. It's such an honor to have you
Thank you,
talking
Monica.
to me again. And
Yeah, it's been
thank
wonderful.
you also for people who are watching. We're doing this little competition that if you write a review before the 4th of August, I gift you my relax and recharge guided meditation, but you can also be entered in a competition to win a half-hour session with me. So just thought I'd drop that at the end so people know that it's available. 2024, because on YouTube, you never know when people are gonna watch. If they watch in 2030, sorry, it's too late. Not too late to get the wisdom, obviously, but too late for the half hour. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for watching.